I'm so used to this. I got it. I think that.
Okay.
Can't. So I would look at the. Someone.
Is it me?
Everyone mute their computer if you're on Zoom. It's me.
Okay. Okay, is it me? Yeah.
Is it me? Yeah. Yeah, there you go. Is that better? No. It's not me.
There you go.
Oh, no.
No,
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you. Yeah.
Okay, can they hear us?
Can you hear? Can raise your hand if you can hear us?
Okay.
Karen says yes.
Perfect. Uh,
Mike erases that too.
Hi, Mike. Well, is it time? Yes, welcome. I'm glad you're all in various places and that we can see you together. I have a revised agenda and I've put it up here. And in part, it was because of our discovery of the 2008 comprehensive plan. And we thought that provided us a launch pad for looking at what we need to do. So in discussion with Dana and Ann and Brian, we thought maybe that having Cascadia here was premature. So I called them and talked with them and asked them, I sort of laid out where we were. And I said, we think maybe it would be, that we're not where we thought we were and we'd like to postpone that. So we postponed that. So the revised agenda would be to do, it's up there in the minutes, citizens' comments, and then Brian and Dana will take a look at the climate action plan and make some proposals about how we might move forward with that. And then we have some reports from other groups, and Ann is going to talk about communications, and I think that gives us an opportunity to weave that into what we've learned about the 2008. And then there are just some other reports. I sent this to you, the report on the Planning Commission, so you don't need to hear it. There is a question I want to ask everybody, and that is, what do we need from the city? So that we ask them once, we can ask them again, but I thought if we made one ask, that would be more. So that's a piece of what we want to do. And then I listed the next steps from the last meeting that we can go over. So is there any objection to the revised agenda or additions or changes? No, great. Okay, the minutes. Did we get minutes? Has anyone read the minutes? Okay, we're going to put the minutes off till the next meeting without objection. So read your minutes, she said to herself. Okay, do we have any citizen comments?
There's a raised hand.
Okay. So we're going to turn it over to Dana first, is that right? And then Brian? Okay. There's the pressure of performing.
I know. Exactly. And also.
You're big, Ann. Oh, now I'm big. I don't want to be.
This is me. Trying to figure out how this stupid home screen works.
Oh, okay. Wait, actually, let me change this.
You know, when we're all able to meet in person, we're going to be really good at this. We will have mastered it by the time we're not in the. Yeah. It's on my screen.
Oh, weird.
Okay.
Okay.
Do you like my computer?
Well, the problem is that we can't show the button.
Yeah, we can't see it.
Yeah.
Well, unless you can see it too.
Yeah,
No, Sarah would have to share it with everybody, I think.
right.
So I should
Oh.
stop
Share
sharing
your
and
screen?
you share?
That's,
Yeah, let's try that.
That's really, really weird.
it's actually, it says I'm viewing your screen.
Yeah,
that's what I'm saying, if they
Okay,
can
so
see.
I think it's somehow hidden in there. So Corey, hit that grid thing at the top. Yeah, that grid, okay. All right, so why can't we see Dana's screen?
There,
Oh,
there's
there's
something, there.
That it?
Is that what you're showing Dana?
Yes, that's
Okay,
right.
cool.
So can we make those people smaller?
No.
No?
That's the problem, we can't ever get rid of that.
Oh.
Yeah. I mean, the problem is. but-
Oh, wait, I can just do this.
Yeah, hit the little on the far left.
Weird, that's not.
Oh, okay.
that's not yours.
Nice. There's something.
You gotta learn the far left. then it'll-
Right.
yeah.
We can still see you on our computers, but we're not seeing you on the screen up in
Okay,
front.
and I can't see any of you, so that's okay. Yes. The people at home, I don't see you, I'm sorry, so somebody will help me if I need to see. So I just wanted to run through and just say that there was this amazing weird historical policy that was found by just sleuthing around or asking. So it has shown up.
Walk through our heart.
Walking the park. It was a walk in the park.
Park. Yay, Sarah. So there's lots of things that walking through the park for friends. And I did
Just a
talk
heads
to
up, there's an
Miriam. I
echo.
also realized that Miriam actually knows or knew of the writer of this document. So Miriam may also have some good things to contribute.
Okay, Tamara, what's up?
Yeah, there's an echo.
Can't hear you.
You can't hear me?
Can you hear us?
Yeah, there is an
Can you,
echo.
Rick, can you hear us, Tamara? Yes, but we can't hear you.
Ah,
What's
okay.
that? Did you push mute in the corner there of this big screen?
Mm-mm.
Nope.
Something was adjusted, just speakers had feedback. I don't know if that.
Yeah.
That's a good thing.
For what it's worth, I can hear
Mm.
Tamara. Just
They're all talking, we
Yeah,
can't hear
yeah,
any
sure.
of you.
I can too.
Okay, we can't hear any of the people remote, so
They
we're
can
working,
hear us.
but you can hear us? Okay, we're working on this.
Maybe we can do a chat.
They could type in the chat. I think if you go, you're gonna need to look at your mute button
Right,
down
yeah.
on the bottom left and look at the other audio options to go along with it. And then, so speaker, what speaker are you using?
There's some feedback.
No, but if we hit mute on.
Maybe if we.
Yeah, so
all
that,
hit mute on
so
our-
that microphone is now no longer, money, yeah, that microphone again. Or what's, the one that's chosen, is
We
it?
just
is
tap
this-
it. Like, don't tap the arrows.
Wait, hold on, a second. So the microphone is selected, which microphone is that? That is one right here. Well, then, no, because if we mute that, then they won't hear us at all.
Right.
No, so,
Yeah, you're
can you check the,
Linda's
go there again? So the question is the volume up?
Linda, can you hear me?
Most basic. Go back to where you were in the audio options.
I don't think they can hear us.
Um,
Yeah, they don't seem to be. Oh,
go to
camera
audio
feed.
settings.
Anne, can you hear us?
Yes.
Okay.
But
Turn
we
up
can't
the-
hear you
Turn
guys.
up the speakers.
Linda, can you hear us?
Yes, but there's an echo.
We can't hear you,
No, on
Linda.
the screen.
Can't hear us?
Thumbs up if you can hear us.
Yeah, we can hear you.
They can hear us, but we
Yeah.
can't hear them.
Can you hear
There
this?
are 3 options in the speakers. Did we
I'm
get,
guessing not.
did we check all 3 of them to make sure we weren't getting feedback?
Just test the speakers.
Yeah, you could do in that
Yeah,
setting. you can
That's
do
it, you
test
just test
speakers.
to see if we're getting anything at all. Yeah, that might be wrong.
No, it says, yeah, we're not hearing
We're
it.
not hearing anything, it's not connected, even though we are registering output,
So it's just
we're not
choosing the
hearing
speaker.
anything.
Maybe just stop sharing screens for a moment. Can you guys hear us?
Yep.
Yeah, they can hear us.
Can you hear us?
What's does it think we're out?
Because I think about USB something.
Yeah, which is a weird thing because it means there are external speakers, but I mean, I guess there's they're not, those aren't USB.
We'll try them all.
But it's probably the same thing. Same thing, it clears the feedback.
Well, that's better.
Because Sarah is.
Can you,
Problem is microphone.
We have a microphone here.
Right. Part of it is basically that whenever the room speaks, that picks it up with the speakers printed out, it'll like hear it again, and that's where the feedback is coming from. So we need to have something isolated like way over there.
Why don't we try just turning that speaker
what
on?
about the lower right where there's a microphone on the
Turn that
screen
microphone
itself? That's just the
It was
microphone.
good.
Can you turn off that microphone? That might just be the TV microphone.
Oh.
And so turn that off.
Right. Can you hear us?
I can hear you, but I can't hear the meeting at all now.
No, I can't.
No.
So on the other hand, the annoying squeaking is gone.
Yeah.
Okay. Are they speaking?
I think they are speaking.
Okay, well, we can go home. Oh, we are.
Writing it.
Now, can you hear us? Can you hear us?
Yeah.
This is what I'm gonna propose. This is a bad thing to do, but I'm gonna propose that we just go ahead. And that we cannot get your questions, and we understand that. There's no chat function. And I will call you each tomorrow and get your feedback.
Or they can just write it, they can hold up a sign.
Oh, then you can email, what is your email? Tracy at,
Yeah, it's at the city one.
you can email Tracy at tracy@ci.lake-forest-park.wa.us.
But after we're done sharing, then they'll be. We're not sharing now.
Did we didn't want to try to select a different microphone to use the old microphone.
Yeah, so that's, they just take this out.
Yeah, just take that out. Can you hear us now? Hello?
We can hear you.
Yes, okay, and then now go to the audio and see if that's any better. The speakers, yeah, and choose a different speaker.
Ah, we hear you laugh.
Can you say something?
Can you hear us?
Yes.
Yay.
All right, good meeting you guys.
Yeah.
It's still the days of pandemic.
Okay, so.
Can you hear us well, or can you just hear us so-so?
Pretty good, actually.
So, yeah,
Yeah, there's an echo, but we can hear you.
echo.
Have to like any more speech and something up there, right?
It's either the camera, I didn't see
Right.
which one she chose.
Right.
It's either the camera or it's something on the.
This is how it was last time, right?
Yes.
It's very helpful if you speak slowly and direct your mouth towards the screen when you speak.
Oh, okay.
I'll just go right.
I'll figure it out. Okay, we're good to go.
Try this again. So I was gonna do just a quick review of what was done in 2008. Catch everybody up in just a really brief way. The paper that was put out with this work is about 70 pages, and I think you all have a copy of it. So this is just kind of a review to go through what is in that, and maybe then we can think about how to pull together what is in there for using for whatever we can take out of it. So what happened at that time in 2008 was that for some reason there was a move to get some kind of climate change policy in Lake Forest Park, and so Lake Forest Park, probably under the suggestion of this person who wrote up the climate plan, whose name is escaping me, but I will show it on the screen in just a minute, got LFP to join this organization called ICLEI, which is basically an organization that still exists that is involved in local actions to combat climate change. I've looked up their website recently, and things have really changed since 2008. So this is based on kind of an old plan, as you might expect. So LFP joined ICLEI and then passed this resolution called Creating Climate Protection Campaign. And they contracted with this student at the University of Washington to create a climate action plan for us. So here is the resolution that they're going to do climate action in Lake Forest Park. And basically the idea is to use these 5 milestones, they called it, to create a document, mostly to mitigate carbon dioxide emissions, greenhouse gas emissions. Okay, so here's just a little overview. The student's name is Emily Templin, who was working with Daniel Carlson. Evidently, she received $1,000 for some hours putting together this document. And those 5 milestones that I referred to on the last slide are here. So she got through 2 of them. And the 3 others, I'm not sure what happened. But this plan kind of disappeared after 2008 and has only just now resurfaced. So we can kind of put together maybe the history if we dig around and ask people who were around at the time. But what she did do was she herself conducted a greenhouse gas emissions inventory using software that was made available through ICLEI, their software. It's no longer something that we can access. There may be updates to that kind of software. It may be the kind of thing that we can do ourselves a little bit or plug in some of the similar kinds of numbers that she put in order to get this inventory. But we're also, in line to get the inventory from K4C or whoever it is. So we can just see how that works. The nice thing about doing it ourselves is we know what goes in and what comes out. Brian was thinking that sometimes these are a little bit mysterious. You get the numbers back, but you don't really know how those numbers were so forth. So she conducted a greenhouse gas inventory. Does someone have a question out there? Okay. And then based on that, developed an action plan for LFP. And this is the contents of her action plan. She set up a nice table of contents here, and this is all the materials that are in. So like I said, she got to these 2 parts of the plan. She did make notes about next steps, and those next steps were to carry out the last 3 parts of this plan, which are to establish a reduction target for emissions and ways to implement this plan and ways to monitor and report progress for this plan. Obviously, these didn't work or didn't get implemented. So, and in fact, they were not very well developed. So I think Brian is going to come back to this table of contents after I speak and go through some of these with ideas for how we can move forward with these things. I thought I would just quickly run through kind of the content within each of these. So here's this greenhouse gas inventory that was done. There were actually 2 inventories that Templin did. One was in 2002, one was in 2007. The 2002 one, using 2002 data, has a bunch of missing things in it. So I put up 2007 numbers here. The 2002 numbers are there, but they're missing things like they didn't include transportation, which is a little bit strange. So I'm just putting up 2007 here. And the way that she did this study was to look at the whole community of LFP, everybody, everything in there. And then she also did another analysis of just municipal operations. So this here is the whole community-wide inventory. The municipal inventories is part of this, but she then kind of sucked that out and did a little bit more of an in-depth analysis of just the municipal.
So what is it? What are those things?
Yes. So here's a little pie chart that basically just shows that 89% of the emissions was transportation, that red part. And she broke it down into where these emissions were coming from, gas, diesel.
The graph on the right says 2002.
Oh, so
And it says residential natural gas is
Yeah.
89%.
The parenthetical comment says 2002 did not include transportation.
Right. So that's what you're
yeah,
using
so
to figure out
I had put all of them up there. Like, look in her document. There is a graph that looks almost exactly the same as this. It's the 2007 one. And basically, I'm putting it up here to show you that what she found was that it was mostly transportation in both 2002 and 2007. This is the municipal one, so I'm just going to community first. But like I said, they was pretty similar, those two. I think that's why I deleted the wrong one.
So what this is saying is that most of our transportation is, emissions are from cars, from gasoline and diesel trucks. And the second line says that commercial and residential emissions are mostly from natural gas. Is that right?
Well, what this is saying is that, so if that circle is 100% of all the emissions that are generated, about 90% of those emissions come from transportation, from diesel and gasoline. The other, whatever, 11% of that comes from commercial and residential emissions, which is natural gas mostly. And then very, very tiny amount of emissions comes from electricity, which has problems. She actually says, it's small because our electrical comes from hydroelectric power. So I don't know exactly why. There is that little blue sliver there, right there is electrical, and someone could go through and analyze this. I'm not sure that it's really worth going back to these numbers. I think we should go ahead and move forward with our new ones. There is a question as to whether we could use these numbers as a baseline, like 2007 as our baseline, to try to reduce from that, and we will have to think that out and talk about it. But this is what is here now. So there is this 2007 set inventory, and like I said, a 2002 inventory as well. I think the 2007 inventory for a community-wide and also for the municipal operations. They're both better. That's 2007.
Yeah, so did she include in that 70-page document how she arrived at these numbers? Great.
What do you think?
Computer software.
Yeah, so she's pretty, she's given a fair amount. The software is not really available anymore, so it's hard to know exactly what the inputs are.
Plug something in and see what
Yeah.
happens.
That's what ICLEI provided. Okay, that's what
Yeah.
ICLEI provides for you. So they say if you have this many houses and there, this many are natural gas, put that in there and we'll do the math for you.
So there is a detailed data in the appendix of it that lists the
She's
issues.
pretty good about documenting things.
So you can
Yeah.
look at that in detail and get more information on exactly what went into getting these numbers.
Okay, so, go to the next slide, show you what you found with the municipal operations. Again, this is what emissions, just municipal, the town park essentially is, not the town, the government is producing. And up here I've circled the comparison of what the municipal operations emissions are versus community emissions. And it's very, very small part of it. If you break up that small part of it into, well, where are those emissions coming from? They're coming from streetlights, buildings, employee commutes, and vehicle fleets. And again, this is the 2007 one. The 2002 one has missing things in that. So it's also in that report. You can look at it, but I think the 2007 one is better for completeness. Any questions about all of that? Okay, so that was the emissions, the inventory that she made for the town. And then she put together the rest of the document, these climate action plan, which is she talks about it as not a final plan, it was a proposed plan and a preliminary emissions. And then, like I said, the next parts didn't really come together, I think, so it went under. And if we think about what was going on in 2008, Sarah brought up that yeah, 2008 was when people were preoccupied with lots of other things. There was a recession. And so probably there's other things. The climate action plan was set up to be written with a couple volunteers, Jen Halliday, who's still around, and Jackie Gardner, who's also still around, evidently. I don't know her. I know that Jim is around.
I called Jim today.
Oh.
And talked with him, and he said, he vaguely remembered it, and, he said, one of the issues was there wasn't a staff person assigned to the end of it.
And she, in this report, repeated many times that a staff person is necessary to get this done. So that's interesting. That's what he said. Anyway, they put together a literature review. They put together the, they talked to people in the government here, and they put together this committee and wrote a report. And the report goes through and talks about, well, what actions can we do based on the emissions that have been inventoried here. This is a funny kind of step. So here we are with the municipal actions, and remember the municipal emissions is tiny. They were able to get a pretty good table with, priority of what these different actions could be. They've got a list of actions along the side of the table, and then along the top they kind of rate them effectiveness, and I think they also look into expense and things like that. So they had this idea of how to do these small actions, but it was much harder to get together ideas for the whole task. So what she kind of said was, well, these are a good kind of modeling for the government to do these things. But there are all sorts of cans of worms to be opened up with the actions that are proposed for the rest of the government. So these actions were kind of arrived at by talking to people that were working in the LFP municipality and city council people, and that she described it as an iterative process of coming to this list of actions. So put them out. They discussed what all of the effectiveness and costs and everything for these actions, and then had it reviewed a couple times by so that's a good kind of model, I think, for getting these things out there. I think it's just really hard to put together a list of actions.
And I think these are the things that they could control, right? Those are the things that committee could implement, right? Yeah.
As opposed
Yes.
to
Yeah.
the next set. So I just want to just draw your attention here. I put in red that there is no indication of any strategy for pulling in people in the rest of the community. This was all pretty much closed. It sounds like it was a committee process. They did interaction with the town people and town council, but it was not open. Okay, so that's the municipal actions. For the whole community actions, which of course is where a lot of the emissions were, they broke it down into 4 categories: transportation, building, land use planning, and recycling and waste. But if you look through some of these, there are some issues in here that we've been dancing around for many years. Things like multi-use communities and walkable neighborhoods. We have had a lot of trouble with development and trying to figure out how to do development there with lowering emissions. So I think it's good to have this kind of have it all laid out like this, but I think there's a lot to think about in here. The The other things that she mentioned in his recommended actions was an education outreach campaign. Again, this is really like educating and outreach, putting ideas out to the community, not bringing in any information. So I think we should think about that. Ideas she put out there were like the town setting up challenges for the community. Can we reach this level or whatever? And incentives, which sometimes have a cost. So think about that kind of thing. Distributing educational materials and that kind of stuff. She did mention that one of the costs that you might think about incurring is a pamphlet and printing costs, which was thought about. Then also getting out there to people impacts, like facts about climate change and about emissions in the area. And then again, comes up this idea of having a staff, full-time staff person in charge of this and who will carry it on the committee or whatever. So setting it up so that it's going to survive is an important idea.
Sustainability.
Sustainability of the sustainability plan. Yeah. She also put out a list of these reductions that were already underway in 2008. Everybody look at some of these, like turn off lights notices. They're pretty small videos, but you know, think about, make sure that these are being done now. And then she cut to this part. So this is the second of the milestones from ICLEI, which is to put out a reduction target. She didn't specifically give any kind of reduction percentage. She didn't go there. She did kind of suggest that ICLEI suggests 5 to 20% baseline reduction. So I think there's going to be a lot of work to figure out what are the current, reasonable guidelines for that kind of thing. We do with this emissions report that she did, we kind of have a baseline. So we need to think about whether we want to do anything with that baseline.
Tracy had a
Trace.
Just had a, there we go.
All right.
Yeah, just wanted to mention that the Key County Strategic Climate Action Plan uses 2007 literally as a baseline year for the 25% cut and 50% cut. I just couldn't help but notice the coincidence in our dates.
Yeah. Well, that is interesting. So if we have the numbers from 2007 and want to maybe re-crunch them or use what she has.
Or even get the key foreseeable one, right?
Or get,
To be available next week.
Yes, again.
The 2007 numbers?
Yeah, this report had
What is it?
2007.
Right.
And the K foresee would be for 20, yeah, I guess 19 or 20.
Oh, so that's not the same baseline though.
Right, but the idea is that we can compare the 2020 numbers.
So sorry. Thank you for connecting the dots there. Like see where you're going.
okay, so here's Templin's plan in kind of a nutshell. So she provides the foundation for these inventories. She has characterized proposed mitigation actions. All of the actions in this proposal are mitigation. There's nothing in terms of like trying to build up a community or think about any kind of impacts that might befall the community or the vulnerabilities of the community are. And I think that kind of reflects the time as well. We are now like seeing many more of these impacts, and I think back then it was a little bit more these local governments were just trying to do something when they saw that there was no world leadership or national leadership on these issues. The Kyoto proposal had just been declined by the US, so we're just trying to get local things accomplished here. So the focus was on reducing the amount of greenhouse gases. Now I think we have a very different perspective on this, and while that mitigation is of course really important, and we should be doing that, we now also have to be thinking about what are the kinds of adaptation things that we can make better. And in terms of a community, to me, it almost seems more important than reducing CO2, but so then she lists the reductions that are underway. She puts together kind of this action plan and laid out some of the framework for a target reduction, for some kind of implementation strategies, and how to monitor and report the progress here. So she's got these recommended next steps. So we do have a layout with this. We have something. It was written a little bit before Shoreline's original. So, I mean, that's an interesting comparison to do too. How did Shoreline take their 2012 plan and convert it into their current plan, which they just did? It may be helpful for that. And she's got tons of appendices in there with lots of data and ideas. So there's a lot. She has these recommended next steps. So we can think about those. Again, I think we have to modernize. And so here's my little schematic about what's been done here. She made this emissions inventory, and these 5 things that are on the screen here are those 5 milestones from the IC. And the ones in green are the ones that she did. So she didn't get to the ones that I have in gray there. She discussed the communications plan, and all of this is sort of addressing the threat of rising global emissions. Right? So the idea is, okay, what we're going to do is we are going to try to reduce CO2 or reduce CO2. I think what we need to start doing is thinking about, like I said, other threats, this other threat, which is impacts, which is starting to bear down on us. And in doing that, think about the community adaptation piece for it. And so adding in another part, which would be an inventory, but that can assess what do we have in our, what vulnerabilities do we have, what kinds of impacts might we expect to see, and what kinds of assets do we have in the community that we use. So I see that as, kind of parallel to the emissions inventory, and maybe something that we can put together ourselves as another part. And Brian's going to be talking about how we split up and do this. So I'm not, okay. Let's see. And then she mentioned this communications piece, but I think that this is another huge piece, and I know you've got things to say about this too, but it feeds into every single one of those other numbers that are up there. And so I think that's a really important part to connect our town concerns of people that are out there with what we can do, both for mitigation and for figuring out how to address these impacts, thinking about what those impacts are, how are people feeling climate change. Oh, so then I made a to-do list. This is kind of, it's non-linear. It's kind of like my picture there. And it has these things kind of rearranged a little bit. So we need to do these inventories. I think we need to do emissions inventories, impacts and vulnerabilities, and assets inventory. And then we need to figure out how we're going to pull these together and, prioritize actions that we can do, that the town can do, that individuals can do. There's, infinite numbers of these, so how we're going to prioritize those, that kind of thing. And maybe we do some kind of cost benefit or time frame kind of analysis of these, like she did in her report. And maybe we develop some kind of iterative methodology for making lists and giving them out to different parts of the community. We also need to develop a time frame for what we're doing here. We submitted a very preliminary or rough time frame, but I think we need something that's going to guide us. I think we need to determine how and when we're going to get feedback from people. We need to consider consultants, whether we're going to use that kind of strategy. We need to think about possible funding sources and needs. And then simultaneously, we need to develop this community interactions piece and also be thinking about how this is going to be implemented, how we can get staff in there, how we are going to monitor. And then maybe other things that you guys have thought about, which would also be actions. That.
Thank you. So, any questions? What questions do you have?
Stop sharing.
I can swear that we were a member of Italy at one point, because I know Kenmore and Shoreline both are current members.
Yeah, so it was part,
Yeah.
that was that paper, I think, represented.
I don't think,
LFP joint.
I asked Mark if they had joined it, because he had pushed them to join it, and they did not.
Okay.
Oh, really?
But that was in the more recent, in the last.
Oh, but in 2007.
They were in
2007.
2007 to join.
Yeah.
But it's a membership organization, and the membership lasts.
Right.
And it's, so it's a paper.
Yes, paid one.
Yeah.
It's not super expensive. It's like $150 or something like that.
It makes me wonder though, like whether that, with K4C, we have, I think, a lot of that support that maybe we don't need.
I was gonna ask, what's the value of joining?
That would be another, what do you get? Look into it, what is
What do we get for it?
that? Just come over to.
So it's with, Tamara.
Yeah, so some of my questions were answered. I was going to ask, what is the cost to join and what are the benefits that we get for joining? I mean, even if we don't get a lot, is it kind of just something that it looks good, like we're part of it? Are they doing something also that helps benefit our community? So by joining, we're helping their efforts to fight climate change.
I know that, I don't know very much, but what I do know is that they do have this data that you can, this formula that you can input data into. But they also have shared collaboratives where they're working between and among cities on various issues. So it's, but I don't understand it all. So it would be worth looking at, I think. And both Shoreline and Kenmore, I used as part of their developing their plans, they used ICLEI data, but they didn't, but we had the opportunity to see what this K4C data shows us.
I wonder if it'd be interesting to see how the two compare. So if ICLEI gives us data that aligns with K4C, then we feel pretty good about our data.
Yeah.
And if all of a sudden they're on opposite ends of some things, it's like, well, which one do we go? Maybe it'd be worth it just for that.
My apologies, it's $1,200 for the city our size annually.
And do they have a list of what you can?
That's what I was looking for, and it's there's a lot of different resources on the website. And unfortunately, of course, unless you're a member, you can't go into behind the paywall. Right?
But I bet we could go to Kenmore
Yeah.
or
For sure.
Shoreline and ask.
Yeah,
let
they are.
us go through that. I have a relationship with those people who I've asked for many things from already. Why not one more? Yeah, Ann, you're on mute.
Yeah. One question I had when I reviewed this report, I was really struck by the assumptions of carbon dioxide emission reduction by things like turning lights out at City Hall. City Hall's on City Light, isn't it? So there are no carbon emissions associated with the electricity that feeds City Hall. So I think some of the reductions and some of the discussion here is based on a misapplication of the ICLEI approach, which is taking an average, sort of a national average of any given building is generating this when it uses X amount of electricity. And there was no fine tuning to recognize that for a municipality, for example, all the electricity is coming from a hydropower source. So, for example, the recommendation to even consider solar panels is, odd. It's just odd. So I think this is a great master's thesis, and I think we should look at it through the eyes of our current experience and as a group of scientists and citizens with a good understanding of our community, and not just assume. I think we should integrate this information into our baselines and move forward with it, but grain of salt throughout, because this is a master's student doing this for the first time without an in-depth knowledge of granular detail in the community that we can now bring. The other is that there's some cool opportunities available to us that aren't mentioned in this report, because back in 2008, this was really good. The entire community that has been addressing climate change has evolved a lot, studied a lot, tried ideas, found things that we didn't really think about a lot back in 2008. So I'm really excited by this. I think it's fantastic. I'm delighted to see we have a start. It's awesome. And I'm really looking forward to taking this and moving forward with it constructively, again, so it suits our community.
And to speak to your idea there, Anne, she has traffic lights sucking up or producing quite a bit of CO2. And I'm trying to figure out where traffic lights are involved in that with hydropower and Seattle city lights. So,
Although, I mean, it's this teeny little tiny bit.
Well,
but now they've gone
Anyway.
to LED, so that's
even less. But she also completely omitted, we do have a number of people who use oil. I mean, my house, we're just now taking it off of oil fuel. So the entire carbon footprint for my house was kind of neglected in all this. And because you're looking at electricity and natural gas and not fuel oil. So, I don't want to quibble. I just want to say, great starting point, fantastic master's thesis, $1,000. My goodness, we didn't pay minimum wage. Even in 2008. And we got a phenomenal product for that. And I'm so grateful that we have it. And I just want to commend the awesome work that she did and the data that's available to us because of the work that she did. However, this isn't an ending point. It's a midpoint that we should take with the knowledge that we bring to the table.
Any other questions or issues, or want to move on?
Yeah, to one quick point about Anne's point, which is that I was trying to find it, but I don't think I can't locate it. You know how Seattle City Light has that little pie chart that always shows where its sources of electricity are from? I swear back in 2008, it wasn't entirely blue hydro. I could swear there was a chunk that was still oil or gas, because they were super proud when they finally got rid of that one little sliver, right? So you're right. I mean, you should take it with a grain of salt, but it might be the case where at that time it made sense to turn off lights just because it wasn't completely hydro or something.
And she does reference hydro in this report. It's not like she.
Right.
and more reason why updating this should be fun. It should be a really
Yeah.
But I think the takeaways are transportation's a problem. That's a big area, and natural gas. So, I mean, those are, we kind of knew that before we began, but it's confirmed by some data.
And but oil too, we shouldn't forget, I mean, what Ann said about oil, 'cause we also just got off of oil a couple of years ago. So I don't know how many people are on oil still that
And do you have that, do we have that data from People for Climate Action?
No, we don't. And it can actually be quite difficult to identify houses on home heating oil without doing intensive research because of the way household heating oil tanks are regulated. So that's a granular discussion that we should have at a different time. But I would like to follow up on it because I have had some thoughts as to how we could get a better handle on that. But yeah, the good news is the more we convert to hydropower, which is a hydrocarbon-free energy source for us by and large, that is actually a significant reduction of our carbon footprint. I know for our household, removing that oil tank and moving to heat pumps is going to save money and reduce our carbon footprint tremendously.
All right, anything else before we move on? Is this? I feel like this, like, as Ann said, it's a jumping off point, it's a helpful thing. It puts us in a different place than we were last month when we were starting fresh. So I find this to be helpful. And Dana, thank you for laying that out for us. That's really. Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, are we going to look into whether we want to join ICLEI?
I put it down on the to-do list, is research ICLEI. Is that one of the things that is that what we said we want to do? Okay, so
Thank you.
I put that on my to-do list.
And thank you, Dana.
Okay, Brian, you're up.
Yeah. Oh, well, actually, Corey, I don't have PowerPoint. Do you mind sharing your screen and being my slide mover?
Yeah, you don't have it.
You forgive me. I do better if I stand. This is my teaching. No, I think one of the things that we also have to consider is the fact that we got bragging rights over to Charlotte.
Yeah,
We put ours out before they did, man.
And we were so cool, we even forgot.
We forgot it. Yeah. We were so climate conscious. We forgot. Yeah, so I'm going to quickly just kind of talk about things that we sort of scatterbrained. Oh no, I'm good right here.
Oh, come on, you should be
People can't see.
Oh,
Yeah, yeah, you can see.
I can't even see myself.
Yeah, but they can see
We
you.
can see you. Okay.
Let's see if we can get this thing going. I'll say, yeah. So, what we kind of did a real quick brainstorm on how could we utilize the fruits of this great document, but yet make it more applicable to our modern times in 2022. And so one of the things that I think we should recognize is that even though we like to think of this as a climate action plan, it isn't a climate action plan. She clearly states it in her title. It's a preliminary greenhouse gas inventory and a proposed climate action plan. So we really are just beginning our work. It's really nothing that we should be thinking that, oh, our work is done. Go ahead, Corey, to the next slide. Oh, you can't get it up on the whole screen? What if you click up this button here?
It does, but then I can't take notes.
Oh, you can't take that. That's fine then. No worries. No worries. Yeah, go ahead, next slide. So the category, the different table that she had, I sort of did some scrap drawing on the right hand side there of the different sort of the different subheadings she had. She had the introduction and problem stating, and then she had the methodologies, and then she had her greenhouse gas emissions, and then all the actions and plans. So looking at that and talking it through with Sarah and with Dana, we kind of think, we could do this kind of proficiently. We kind of develop 3 teams. We don't have to do it this way. I just thought that this would be the most efficient use of our time. It would give us all directions on where we could actually be headed, and working together collectively. And we could then put together this pretty comprehensive report. So I thought a team A would be what I would call the the demographic team, or we could call it the LFP data team if we want to keep the data kind of in the fresh in mind. And team B would be sort of the carbon data team, and those are the people that would be doing a lot of those number crunchings, looking over the data that Templin came up with, looking at the K4C data and maybe even the Hickley data to see if we can actually get some a much more fine-tuned idea of what kind of carbon we're producing as a city. And then finally, team C would be that what I would call the action group. These are the guys that are, girls and guys, sorry, that are out there and they're trying to do a lot of what Dana was talking about, the community outreach, not just community outreach, but also getting community input, community interactions on how to go forward. So sort of the people that spearhead the, just for the public type of trust going. So we'll go to slide 3. So if you want to know what would be involved in each of these 3 teams, team A would be sort of, as I mentioned, really looking at a lot of the introduction was based on 2008. Well, we know that LFP size may have not changed too much, but maybe, we definitely need some updating on what LFP city is. What are the medium incomes? What are the population size? How is the size of the actual LFP in general? We can think about tree covers and things like that, all the things that might have changed since 2008, all that needs to be updated. So there's going to be it seems like a fairly tangible way of sort of, putting this back up to 2022. And I think we also need to do a lot of interesting work. It's funny, in 2008, they hadn't come up with the new report about how all scientists now agree we are causing it. This is more like both scientists agree, we think we are causing it. We need to do some updating there in the wording. We need to kind of make sure that people understand that we do have some more definitive data and the scientific world is behind it. So there's a lot of things that we need to update about, a lot of impacts too. It's amazing kind of looking back on the 2008 on what they would consider the environmental, economic, and social impacts. And there's most of those stuff are covered today, but there's a lot of things that we can do to kind of see the new data that's come out about how we're now planning differently. So there's a lot of really interesting things we could do for updating that. Readdressing the local level climate change issues here in Lake Forest Park in particular. We've got more heat droughts. Heat waves. What are we going to do? How are we going to mitigate for that? Or how are we going to adapt to that? How are we going to help people that are more vulnerable? And update the county, state, and global communities. Comments. A lot of these changing issues and things. They don't talk about vulnerable people that much in this report. We really need to put that as a big part of our climate action. I think we've got to really be showing the forefront for all that. So that's team A. That's what I kind of envision what team A would be doing. Team B would be this carbon data team. Obviously, we're waiting on the K4C stuff, but to really kind of go through and scrutinize this report in a way, not a bad way, but just to kind of think about, well, what kind of assumptions did this report really kind of cover? We've already mentioned.
Is this the K4C or?
No. This is the
Okay.
template data. Sorry, or the 2008 report.
Yeah.
That software that they used obviously had major assumptions, but then again, maybe Tracy's right. Maybe back in 2008, Seattle City Light was still using coal or other kinds of ways of looking at our energy influence. Assumptions that were used, assumptions not used, all these things need to be really considered if we look at a sort of a carbon data team. The fact that it sounds like
I was just trying to find anything I could
Yeah.
about her. I mean, I've heard of her.
Yeah, I've tried to look for it. Maybe she changed her name.
The advisor's not using it.
Yeah, I can't even find the advisor, though I think Dana said she might have.
I clicked on what's supposed to be him and it goes.
Oh, I
sorry,
didn't click.
sorry.
I just saw his picture there.
Oh, good.
They shut her up.
Yeah, I know. This is all a cover up.
I could ask him.
That would be great.
See if I could find any context, because they have these projects that they do with every students that are linked to community.
Yeah.
But usually they're teams, so but she
Sure.
wasn't part of team, so I'm not sure where it fits in, but I can try to find out.
I had a major trepidation flash because the Daniel Carlson, I think, is the advisor. we had a Carlson up the road who died. I'm not sure, I'm sure it's not the same guy. I'm sure it's not the same guy, but there was some real trepidation there too. So anyways, obviously a lot of updates need to be happening for the carbon data teams. That to me is just a lot of number crunching groups. And then finally, team C, again, this is just sort of my imagination of what to do, but the action group is really thinking much more modernly about how this 2008 report deals with reduction targets. What are we going to use as our baseline? Sounds like 2007 may be a good baseline, but I'm not sure that this report is a really good baseline. It's something to really think about. And we have to think about how, the thing is, this report does a nice job, I think, of really breaking down municipal versus residential. And I think keeping those separate is still a pretty good idea, because I think what the immediate action we can do is the municipal way. We've got that control over, we propose that control, I guess, with the city council. So that's something that we really should kind of think about. So greenhouse gas reductions, what are we doing currently? How is that different from what the 2008 report is talking about? Framework and recommended actions that Dana was talking about, how we need to really do a lot more different kind of planning than the 2008 was really kind of letting on, and recommended actions of especially for the adaptation part. How do we start dealing with the problems that we're dealing with now? So that's all things that, again, this 2008 report was designed. So that's all I really wanted to talk about, and just throw out there and see if any, what the discussion of everybody in the group would be about forming these kinds of teams. Do you think it would be efficient? Do you think it would be more, should we all just kind of work together on certain projects at the same time, or what, So I just thought that would be a good jumping off point.
Can I ask you a question? It has to do with your team A, and it's more of a question, I think, for Tracy. What is the city in terms of, because we're looking into the future, right? A lot of this, and so what is the projection for how the city is going to grow? Is something that we might want to include, not just where we are now,
Yeah, especially
but where we're going to
with
be in 20 years.
the new codes
And
for
building what we need to,
building.
in
right, I
terms of
mean,
population density.
We just passed that ADJOURN ordinance, right, which allows people with a lot of certain size to put literally another dwelling in the back, right? Or front, actually, as it turns out. But the point is that we don't know what the impact is going to be. It was sort of dependent demand, but in terms of permits, we haven't seen a ton more. So I think, jury's out on it, but basically the percentage increase in the city's population is probably not going to be huge.
Okay.
So, we're at 13.4. It's probably not going to go much super higher than that.
Okay.
Well, what about like development of mixed use kind of thing? It
Right.
might be that we have different
Right.
different pathways forward.
Sure, and depending on what happens to this land here, literally, clearly that could bring in several hundred more residents, right? Because I think the permittable amount is 350 at the moment. That is to say, households. If you figure a couple of people per household, that's 700 people. Again, against 13,400, it's not going to be huge. I mean, we're not going to do a shoreline, basically, right? So I'm thinking that the demographic data that Brian speaks of, at least the number is not going to be hugely different. Sure, our diversity is different. Sure, our income is different. But, in terms of basically just the sheer numbers, I don't think we're going to become 20,000 people, for instance. That's just my personal opinion.
But doesn't the finance, or the state finance make a projection?
Yeah, and I don't know what that number is, but I can find out.
So there's somebody's thinking about
Yeah.
at least the number.
School board, I would think. Maybe not.
The community is part of the comp plan.
Right.
Can you put the,
Brian, I had one question for you, which was we're coming up with this committee with a survey, right, or some kind of instrument to talk to, find out what the residents are thinking. Which team would that fall under, do you think?
I would think that would be the action team.
Yeah, so it feels like maybe that action team needs to be split into maybe two teams, because it just feels like there's too much
There's a lot of there.
under that one bucket. Like, it's a pretty broad bucket. I mean, we already have, folks working on the outreach piece, so it sort of makes sense that there's the education and outreach maybe as separate. And maybe the actions are, taking things like, the matrix and from that report and, up to modern times, because, yeah, it talks about purchasing fuel efficient vehicles, which, just electric, let's just say electric, anyway, And then there's also the Kenmore one, which has a lot of actions in it, so taking maybe the actions, and that kind of goes back. So one of the things that I've been just trying to look at that we were charged with by the council was best practices, right? So that's like an action, obviously. Those are more like community actions, like these are the best practices. So it falls in that same actions.
I'm glad to be all for to make it routine D.
Yeah, so I think that actions team needs to, and probably it's going to be a group that initially is going to come up with some things that we have to do, and then maybe even start separating that, like start on the actions and then separate it out.
Also, what do you think the two?
I think you can leave the actions, leave it as an actions, but then have a separate community and outreach that's not included in that actions. Because I think that that's something that, you guys have already made some progress, and you're close. And I think that's something that we need to move forward with like sooner than later. Yeah, there's just that it'll take time,
Yeah, it seems to me like you have these three groups, and then you have the communications that's going across all of them. But I don't know how that organizes.
Well, because one of the things also that, like, I'll talk about in a minute was establishing like a newsletter that goes out, and so that could be something where every kind of subcommittee contributes a certain part of it, so that it's more thorough.
So I think the next step is to say, what do you think? How do you like Brian's plan? You can raise.
It's not Brian's plan.
Brian proposed for us. If you like it more than you don't like it, raise your hand.
Is the plan, are we deciding on committees and what to call the different committees and what the roles of the different committees are going to be?
I think the answer to that is yes.
So I agree with the discussion points that I heard, that there's a lot of overlap. And I think that some of the natural breaks that we've already discussed, like the communications, are mirrored in the plan as kind of Team C-ish. But I think we're probably going to have to kind of collaborate a lot with Team A, Team B, and Team C kind of routinely. And part of that is because given that we now have this jump start, I think what we're going to move into very, very swiftly is, well, what can we realistically do? So that's going to triage out very quickly into what can we realistically encourage citizens to do for themselves with their own transportation and their own household envelope, if you will, the building envelope, whether that's encouraging somebody like me to remove their UST and switch to a heat pump or what have you, or how do we address natural gas usage in our community going forward? What are our thoughts on that? Example, City of Shoreline is saying no new natural gas. City of Seattle saying no new natural gas, and trying to encourage people to move off of natural gas. So
and this is an iterative process that we would get into these teams, and then our group meeting would be saying, where are you? Where are you running into barriers? Where do you need more input? And that at each step it would be iterative. So and it might be that it seems to me that first group might actually be done faster than the other two.
Yeah.
So I
Well,
would
they should be, because you want to be use that information.
So we could. Does that make sense, Anne?
it does. I just think that, we're almost at the point of working as a larger group with individuals in the group taking focus on specific components, not necessarily as a sub-team, but with, the communications has to know what the other groups are coming up with while it's doing the outreach. I thought that Dana's point that the communications program that was being proposed in the 2008 was very one directional, and was, we will communicate our brilliance to you, rather than we will reach out to the community and try to engage the community and bring the community in. And I really appreciate the two-way communication process that this group is trying to emphasize. But the two-way communication means keeping that two ways inside our own group too. So
Maybe this would be helpful. Maybe we ask Anna to talk about what she has proposed for the communications, and then come back and ask this question again. Does that make sense? Okay, you're on.
I'm sorry, just before I do that, I was gonna say also, like, splitting up into the subcommittees doesn't have to be concrete for the.
Anna? Anna, I could hear, I was aware you were talking, but I could not differentiate a single syllable.
Okay, what I was saying is, the breaking up into the subcommittees doesn't have to be concrete for the entirety of our process. And I think that once we break into them and we plan, like, there can be some movement, and obviously we're coming together frequently as a whole group to collaborate. So I don't think that it has to feel like separate whatsoever with our kind of work. But yeah, so we had a meeting of the kind of community outreach group. That was myself, Bella, Tamara, Linda, and Sarah. We were kind of just discussing still the planning process. And we kind of broke it up into multiple topics for outreach, namely education, and then feedback, and then gathering new ideas from the community. And then we were kind of looking for, following the plan that Sarah initially created, we'd be implementing these things from about like July to October, so soon. But for education, we kind of came up with some specific things that we could be doing, such as going door to door, having a farmer's market booth, which we have for October, because it was the soonest day we could get. Doing something in schools and addressing the younger demographic, and then also supporting current issues, which is gauging people's interest in what we're doing, and just learning how much people actually know about climate change in our community. And this will include a survey that can be both online and in person. And we were kind of talking about having, when we go to door or have a booth somewhere, we can have a paper copy, but also try to do mostly online. And so they could scan a barcode and have it on a device, because it would be more time efficient and also more eco-friendly. But yeah, we would have paper copies if people preferred those. And then for feedback to be after the education, but kind of ongoing as well. So keeping the community informed of any recent updates, which would be through a newsletter or and/or a social media account. And people can follow along with what we're doing if they so choose. And then for new ideas, just providing somewhere for community members to suggest things or ask questions other than our meetings. And so what we were kind of talking about, what we're trying to do now is make a social media account. And just a kind of a thing we ran into was figuring out what email we use for that. And then that brought up the point of, should we as a committee have our own email separate from the city, like Forest Park, or like, yeah. And then creating a newsletter where you could update people on what we're kind of working on, and that's where you contribute things from all the separate subcommittees.
And then the Cascadia consulting, I don't know where that kind of falls right now, but bringing them to us at some point. And then just having a community table that we kind of go to events in LFP with. There was the picnic in the park event that's brought up as just an example. And then, yeah, just focusing also on having a continuous cycle of feedback after we gather the initial data from people. Yeah, and then, so I did create a draft of the survey, which you sent out in an email, yeah. So if anyone has any thoughts on things that could be improved on that, I guess let me know and I can adjust it. Our goal for that was to try to make it simple so people could, so we could gather initial data from people without having it be overwhelming or particularly time consuming, I guess, especially for going door to door. People would shut us down. They saw a long, lengthy survey. But yeah, that's about it.
When you say barcode, do you mean QR code?
That's what I meant. I wrote down QR code, but I said barcode.
Okay.
Yeah, just checking.
Yes, thank you. Thank you. It seems to me that we could, let's see. We still need to answer the question though. Now, so I think this is a warp and a woof. So we've got these committees and we've got communication. And so the communication has to happen, I think what we've said consistently is early and often, right? We want to keep getting things like the idea of the newsletter. It seems, we send one out. So do we want to go back and try and regroup ourselves into those the 4 categories or not? Okay, the hard part about 4 categories is there are 10 of us. Just say.
Yeah.
Just
That's okay.
more than one.
Different.
Okay, you can join all the committees if you want. Good news.
Yeah, we're gonna need to
Join
move
as many as we can.
people, I think. Like,
Yeah.
These would be subcommittees.
Well,
We're
especially
already.
Oh, subcommittee. Excuse me.
especially when we do go door to door, like anyone's welcome to. We were talking about having people go specifically like in their kind of like small area of the city, like just your neighborhood or something. I think that'd be helpful if like everyone could go to a couple houses or something within their area.
I think there's ways to identify like particularly active people in different areas. Yeah.
Ask other people outside.
Yeah, we need to have a champion, neighborhood champions.
Well, so I'm going to a night out
We
against
can
crime.
even have something like,
Climate
do
champions.
you want to be a climate champion for your neighborhood or target people in that?
Give them something to do.
And I think that's looking at people who are already like active in the community, like whether it's like another club or I don't know, something.
You were gonna bring up a really great point about the national.
It's just I don't know how many people are, do you know how many national night outs
That
are?
are signed up, I don't know, but it's pretty positive.
But it would be a place where we could take that survey. I know if you give me the survey, Tracy and I'll do it in Monday.
And depending like when you guys want the survey to start going out, we have the Battle of the Bands too, which is very popular. We're picnic in the park. And then the yoga on the parks, like there's 50 people there on Saturday.
Wow.
Like I've never, like people I've never really seen before. So
Wow.
there's these different avenues.
Yoga.
And then, you can go to the PTA when school starts back up. There's different groups out there. But social media is where, right, yeah.
But you need an email address.
I need, Bella and I wanted me to use an email address. So here's the issue with that. We will have to have like everything go through our social media. But if you guys set like a calendar up, posts and things, like I can push that through. We can get things on the monthly e-news letter that goes out to everyone. And then we can set up like a notify me group that can be eventually like a newsletter that you guys want to send out.
Is it notify me like the list of, can we get a climate
a Notify Me group. People can sign up for that.
I guess I was gonna have that question about whether, should it be a separate newsletter though, or should it be?
Maybe we start with part of the city e-news
Yeah.
and just see, because like it's a lot of work and content to create. And you know,
Entire
I can
newsletter?
put in like 3 articles for you guys, like I don't like, I'm, you know, between one other person doing it, so.
Yeah.
Is there a possibility for a web page?
Yes, we can, yeah, we'll be able to develop like a separate web page for like the climate library of action tools and stuff on, like under environmental programs.
So we can have an email, can we have climate, it's like Forest Park? City of LSD.com.
I'll see, it'll just have to go straight to me, I know that will, it'll probably have to be connected to my email.
It'd be an alias.
Yeah.
Yeah, for you. So yeah, so the
Yes.
answer is probably
Okay.
yes.
It'll be my, yeah,
But it'll all go to Cory.
Let's inundate her with it. And the Facebook page, the same thing?
it'll have to go through the city.
So then how would that help them?
If like you create posts,
Yeah.
like create like a week, I mean, I don't think we want to do daily posts, like, but like weekly posts, you just create a calendar for the month of August, set things up, and you can just all send it out.
Yes, send her a photo and what you want in the post, right? She'll post it on the date.
So then we need to just make sure people like it.
Yeah.
Twitter, what do you got a Twitter handle?
Yeah, we have Twitter, Facebook, Instagram. Yeah, I can post the next door.
Okay, you said we can have a web page and an email list. Okay, we need a banner and a survey and money.
I have Survey Monkey, gotcha. Banner, we'll get a banner.
We need it next week.
Well,
Do we have a
Logo. So I don't know how long it takes. I crowdsourced my business logo through, I can't remember the name of the site, and it goes out to like the whole world. Basically, you say, I need a logo that says X, Y, and Z, and it has these kinds. I said, I need water, trees, mountains, this is what I do as a company. And then you get back proposals, and I got them back like within days. It was very fast. And then you don't pay anything up front, and then you choose. And it cost me $200 to do my logo and my whole business card design, all of it. It was $200. Did you say how much you want to pay? So that's one way to do it. Just I am not, unless somebody else is a graphic design artist.
I
but-
worry about that because I know the city of Everett tried to do that with like their logo.
Yeah.
And they got in trouble.
Do you have tools in-house, like
A graphic design.
graphic design?
You have me.
I mean, you have the tools.
Uh,
Could somebody else come in and use it?
Well,
Do you have like Adobe Suite or anything like that?
we have Adobe Pro.
I mean, Anna's done some graphic design. I know. I'm not. I'm sorry.
No, I don't sit for us to do stuff on our individual computers. I still have all of my stuff paid for. I have the, I forget what it's called.
Adobe Suite. Yeah, I mean, I also hope Adobe Suite is.
I have like very basic skills. Like,
But I guess the question is, can we do something simple that's maybe the City of Lake Forest Park logo with some like.
Climate Action Committee.
Yeah, just add something
Flames.
to it. Sure. I was thinking more like flooding.
That works.
four different things.
Yeah. But anyway, yeah, maybe we just need to do something simple with an adaptation of that.
I like that idea too, because it's a recognizable logo for people within Lake Forest Park. So they would recognize a logo and then just write, Climate Action Committee above it.
Yeah, let's try that. Okay, we had a couple of other, I know it's running late, and we have
So
three.
we'll say, so budget wise, we're putting 30,000 in the budget for the.
Woohoo!
We'll be able to do some things. We're
No,
not
you have to
gonna be
say,
able-
that's not it.
Don't like it. That's what we're getting, so we'll be able to do stuff. What we will do things, you know, maybe hire like Cascadia to do a full presentation versus maybe we can hire them to do a full. So.
Any money earlier than January of next year?
Depends for what I can try to.
I think we-
Banner, right, you said?
Well,
Yeah,
she said she.
Banner and printing.
But I was thinking that when the when the K4C study comes out, I think that's a real opportunity to do public education. But I think that, again, Cascadia said it'd be $3,000 to $4,000 for them to do a public presentation on the data. They're the group that did that.
We should look at that. That's ridiculous.
Yeah.
$3,000 for
Okay,
to
you
do
are-
a presentation, that's ridiculous. So I build entire workshops and record them and present them for less than that.
Okay, great. Okay. All right, I want to
That's a
do.
good point. I mean, maybe we could do our own presentation, because that was something we mentioned during our subcommittee meeting, was having like Third Place Commons kind of hosting us, where we talk about and explain the numbers that come through, and then have breakout sessions with people and kind of talk about different areas of climate action that they're interested in, and use as a way to present the findings and also community outreach. But if we have the findings, maybe we can do it ourselves.
Okay. So I love this.
There's
Great.
lots of smart people in this room and lots of people that are used to standing up in front of groups and talking, so.
And the whole community about it too, that.
And
Yeah, this is going to be a little off topic, but for next month, I'm hoping to have that the data team will be able to offer y'all a summary of things that we can measure, things that we have measured, and what those measurements can do for us. So for example, we have these measurements from 2008 and earlier, and we'll be able to compare those with current measurements and give you some sense of what's going on, including things like population, which, by the way, has only increased by 760 people since 2010.
the data guy says we're the slowest
So,
growing.
yeah, it's going to be kind of what
It's okay.
we can get. And so that's going to be a pretty broad thing. For example, there is a contract out right now from the city for a tree inventory. So that's happening on its own. And that's something that we will have data for, and that will be a part of our long-term analysis. But our hope is to give everybody a handle on not just things that directly relate to carbon emissions, but also things that relate to our built environment that would allow us to reduce our carbon emissions, like miles of sidewalk, miles of bike path.
I take it that Ann is on the data team, right?
Yeah. So anyone who would like to help with this would be your month to collab, just ping me and make sure that I know that you're interested in plugging in, and we will.
And on those names right now. No pinging you. Who's going to be on the data team?
Can I be on the team or is
Yes.
that set up?
Oh, yeah.
We already have several, we already have Dana and Brian and Linda and myself. And if anyone else would like to plug in this month, please let me know.
Okay, so Ann, Tracy, Dana, Brian, and
So Linda's on both that team and.
And she started a new group.
all right.
Linda's everywhere.
Let me ask if there are people who want to be on the the opening scene.
What?
The first part where we talked about the demographics and the updates. I'll do that.
Team A, demographic.
What is it? What was team A? Yeah, team A.
But it feels like but Ann, you're doing demographics, right?
Not, I literally, all I did was grab census numbers from 2010, 2020. So if somebody wants to do a better job of it, that would be wonderful. I was literally just looking at total population and confirming Tracy's hypothesis that it hasn't changed very much.
I guess I didn't fully understand Brian's back here, but I didn't fully understand so with team A, I guess I just don't fully understand what they would be doing. I mean, it's updating like a lot of the background information, but it's like physically writing. Like, I mean, is that what you're talking about? Like physically taking that document and reading through it, determining what's valid, what's not, and the introductory part, sort of all the background information and bringing that.
Yeah, I think just from looking at the introduction again, we have a different perspective on climate change.
Yeah. I guess I just wonder too, is that the highest priority, right? So maybe because there aren't that many of us and we already have, the data being worked on and communication being worked on. And then Linda had brought up through email about developing the online resource page, which is really, that's part of the actions, right? So that's like an actions part. So maybe we put aside the group A for now, and come back to it, that piece. And we just have some folks working on the actions piece, which can include the online resources list that Linda was talking about. And it seems like going through other climate action plans and saying, okay, well, this was like their summary. What if this applies to us and what doesn't apply to us? As just a starting point between now and the next meeting.
So should we develop a task for like each group to do for the next meeting, or is that?
I don't know the answer to that. Let me say, I think that's not a bad idea. We divided into three teams, essentially, the communications, team B and team C.
And C, which is actions.
And that would, and then we'd come back at some point and update the beginning. So who would like to be, so I'm going to put everybody else in the action team.
I'm happy to be on the actions team.
So what are we calling it? We're still calling it the communications team then?
Yeah.
Just to be clear, okay.
Yeah.
Who's on communications?
We have a list.
Me, Bella, Tamara, Linda, and then Sarah was just overseeing. Can I help you guys? Yeah.
Team D, yes.
Okay.
Well, we all have a team A.
We need
I
to
have
Like
a
that,
question.
we've got a team A.
Is there anything where we're establishing a goal for our mission so that we can bring that into our story?
I think so, but I think we have to see what they are from Cape Bessie.
But I didn't know, are we looking at 20%? I mean, I think we have that, it was said in some of the earlier information,
Yeah.
but just in terms of.
I mean, it's essentially, like Ken Moore basically just said, we're gonna meet or exceed the goals that Cape foresee it during that.
And that's what the city council is.
As
agreed to
already
those.
said.
Right, so I just need to bring that into part of my thinking, but also give that time to share that with the community. So like with that plan, when working with some of the people with Bainbridge, it was trying to figure out what are people easily going to do and what is going to be harder to get them to do. And so that was some of the survey work that was done with those things. So that's, as you said, you want people to fill out the form. And so maybe one of the questions that I can but is having a final, a third question being, would you be willing to fill out a more detailed survey? Right, that is one where I have them, it's not exactly that, but it's like, give me your email and address if you want to continue the conversation. Yeah. Right, yeah.
I think one of the things we might want to consider stating, based on that idea, our ultimate goal should be zero carbon. Right? That really should be our ultimate goal. If that isn't our ultimate goal, I don't know why.
You mean by a certain year? Right?
Exactly.
So then how
exactly.
fast we have to do this?
Well, just that's the end game to me.
But then
Zero carbon.
you have to interpret that for a family,
Yeah.
right? What does that mean for you and help them figure out, well, how do I help with this? How do I help? How does my family contribute to this?
Yeah.
And so that's just kind of how I'm trying to think about it and then try to work that into messaging for people.
framework, but the details. I'm trying to fill in.
Okay, is there anybody who is not on a team? Team B.
You're on the data team already.
So Jessica, I'll join you since my team just disappeared. I'll join you on yours.
Okay.
And we'll do some work on that. What I would like to do then is to have people come back at the next meeting and bring those, whatever they found.
Or just a detail of
Report.
what that. or-
Right,
what
right.
the-
And if there are things, yes,
A report out from the team.
the report out from the team.
Yeah.
So let's see,
And our next meeting is
yeah,
August 10th.
well, yeah, it should be, because the next night is, we have it at, Night Out Against Crime.
Yeah,
Is that
August,
August 10th?
August 2nd is supposed to be it, but that's also like Alabama, so I can't.
Wait, I'm sorry, say it again.
So August 2nd isn't gonna work.
Oh, the August 2nd was supposed to be our date. Got it.
Yeah. So how about, so what were we suggesting, the 10th?
Oh, no, I don't know. For some reason I was off. I was just off.
I mean, we're
August 10th,
Which is a Thursday.
Wednesday.
Okay, great.
Well, would we rather do Tuesday because that's our normal time to meet? I don't know.
Well,
Would
we're
you
gonna-
say Tuesday?
Yeah, well, if we do,
Yeah.
if we do the second Tuesday, we're running the planning commission.
Oh, okay. That's how you. Neither Ann or I could make the 16th. No, I'll be on there. Just do it.
Okay, let's do the 10th.
Yep.
Going once?
Well, and on the 10th, Anna won't be here. But I, yeah, yeah.
All right, so,
10th work for Zoom.
For most folks.
So are we doing like subcommittee meetings for the next one?
yes, you'll need to set up a subcommittee. Okay. Now, Linda, did you need to talk about what you were doing? Or did Jessica cover it? You're muted. You're still muted.
Now I'm unmuted. Okay, are you talking about the resource thing that I proposed?
Yes.
Okay, yeah, what I was proposing, and I spoke to Tracy about this also, is to try to have a place somewhere where we could pull together resource information, articles, things that would not only be helpful to our committee, but that we could share with the community.
That'll be on our webpage, which. we're
Yeah.
using.
So we haven't really had a meeting yet to discuss all that, but that was kind of my goal about that.
We'll help you.
And as I recall, one of the other parts was, in order so that people don't have to read the whole thing, there was gonna be like a sentence or a paragraph that
Right.
describes each of the items in there so that people could pick and choose quickly what they wanted to see.
Right.
That would be on the city webpage, right?
Right.
Fabulous.
We're gonna make that part of the action team, Linda, you and I.
I can go with that.
Great.
Okay.
Okay, so what I have on my to-do list is that we would research ICLEI, and I can do that unless anybody wants to. I'll find out. I was thinking that we should write stories for the shoreline. Can we write stories for the Shoreline Area News?
Yeah, we
Sure.
can put those in the e-news.
Okay, so I thought I'd write one on just the background of where we are, the 2000, story on the 2008 history. And I need somebody who will look at it before it goes out. You'll volunteer?
I'll volunteer, Dave.
Oh, okay, great. And just to sort of, and I think we need to create a number of stories to tell people through whatever vehicle we can. I think we said that the committee, who is gonna call Team B together? And Tracy,
It's kind of,
Dana,
yeah, I'm happy to help with that.
great. Jessica and I will figure out Team C. And if you need a communications, you just send an email out, right? If you want the communications committee to work. Yeah, and I'd like a survey for my night out, which is August 2nd. Okay, yeah. We'll test it out for you. All right, I think that we're good. Is there anything else we need to?
I'll just say I'm pretty much gone next week, So for survey information, we'll need to get that coordinated with the, once you're ready for survey monkey and then we create QR codes and stuff like that.
We can just create. We don't have to do that.
How about the survey monkey?
I think we're not ready for survey. monkey.
Are we? Yeah, we are.
Oh, yeah.
Well,
Okay,
I just have to do a couple of edits to the
okay.
framework that I.
The planning commission did a survey and they got quite, they were very pleased with their response. And they have volunteered to the woman who did that, works with climate and youth on climate and would like to, if you would want to show it to somebody who would like to look at it. Her name is Maddie.
I think it's good to run these surveys by other people first. Yeah. So I think people will get weird.
And
And
I'll
you
send
should
you.
get people to fill it out, you know, like,
Yeah.
people you know or something.
Us.
Just get people, well, who maybe they don't know as much as you, to fill it out and see what you get and see if that's what you want.
Yeah.
Because I'm like looking at this and it's this information that it's just for the committee, I guess, right? Like
We don't know what you're looking at.
the survey.
Oh, the survey. Oh, I'm sorry.
Does that make sense?
Okay. Thank you very much, and we'll see you on August 10th.
Thanks,
Thank
everyone.
you. Thank you.
Yeah, right.
We would have been better if we figured